Beloved Community Talks.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our beloved Community Talks. I'm so glad to be back after being away for a little while. 69 million ballots already cast in person and by mail. Wow, that is great news. And with early voting continuing into this weekend, we will see even more votes cast, and we will be setting a record in history. For the first time, there will be a majority of votes cast before the actual election day. But tonight, in spite of that, we wanted to have this conversation because it is imperative to appeal to those who still feel like it's not important to vote. Who may be dismayed or frustrated or worried about the process. And tonight we want to proclaim that your vote still matters. Your voice and your vote truly make a difference in what happens in our communities, across this nation, and ultimately in the world. Tonight we will discuss, or wherever you are in the world, you may be listening to us from France. We will discuss the importance of your vote, especially here in the United States of America, by recalling our voting history, our struggle with voter suppression, the influence of young voters, the importance of the Black male vote this time, the power that lies in our collective efforts beyond the election. Today, we will answer why vote in 2020. My co-host for Why Vote 2020 are two phenomenal women, and I'm excited to have them join me tonight. Natosha Reid Rice and Brittany Packnett Cunningham will be co-hosting with me tonight. Many of you know Natosha Reid Rice. She has co-presided for our King Holiday commemorative service for the past several years. She's a colleague in ministry with me. And she has recently transitioned to a new role with Habitat for Humanity International. She's serving now as the first, listen to that, the first Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. She serves as an associate pastor for 11 years at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church. Many of you know that's the home church of the King family. It's the church that I grew up in. And right now, she is serving as Minister for Public Life at All Saints Episcopal Church here in Atlanta, Georgia. So I welcome Natosha Reid Rice. And then Brittany Packnett Cunningham is no stranger to our beloved Community Talks. She did an amazing job while I was out on sabbatical. Can you believe it? I pushed the pause button. I had to, because of things that I believe are coming up in our nation, and I wanted to be ready. But I want to thank her for sitting in for me at our last BCT dealing with pain and trauma associated with being Black in America. Brittany, many of you know, is a leader at the intersection of culture and justice. She is a director's leader and former fellow at Harvard's Institute of Politics, exploring social change and intersectional activism. In 2016, she launched Love and Power. That's a discussion in and of itself. A hub created to inspire, empower, and outfit everyday people to seismically shift society. Wow. Let's welcome Brittany Packnett Cunningham. And I just want to thank these phenomenal women, my sisters, in the struggle, for joining me tonight as co-host. And we've heard a lot, and we know that our democracy is at stake in this election. When we don't vote, we put our democracy at risk. And we give permission to perhaps other forms of government to take over, like oligarchies and aristocracies and dictatorships. So it's important that we vote to preserve our democracy. So I know you all know how important that is, and I'm just glad to have you in this discussion tonight. So tell me, why do you think it's important that we vote. You vote because of what? Natosha? Brittany? I think she's on mute.
I can go.
I vote because it's the first act of patriotism. You know, in the midst of all these natural catastrophes, in the midst of this pandemic and the pre-existing conditions that make so many communities and people more vulnerable than ever before. And I vote because I believe that the soul of our democracy depends on the vote.
Mm-hmm.
I say it all the time. I vote because nothing about us should ever be decided without us. I know that my future is on the ballot, not just this time around, but every single time around, whether it is my bodily autonomy, my access to the ballot box, my health care, my education, so much more. And the state of my community is always on the ballot from the top of the ticket all the way to the bottom. So I actually voted just today. I voted early. I didn't have too bad of a wait, thankfully. I masked up and got out there to make sure that nobody could be making decisions about my future but me.
And that's what it's about. It's a democracy is of, for, and by the people.
Absolutely.
We elect our leaders, and we must always be in a position to do that. Tonight, we have our first guest who is so important to this conversation because for years we've heard it's important that you vote because so many people literally put their lives on the line, and we've kind of dismissed that. But I want us to think about that because, you know, people who feel like something is so critical and important. My father used to say, if you haven't found something worth dying for, you're not fit to live. These people literally fought for the right to vote, to preserve it, to advance it, because they thought it was something that was important for us to have our voices represented and to protect that sacred right that belongs to each and every one of us as citizens of these United States. So Ambassador Andrew Young, no stranger to many of us, he's been serving our country over 65 years, and he started in the South and in other places around the United States. But many of us know him as working closely with my father in the civil rights movement as a key strategist and a negotiator during the civil rights movement. He was very involved in the Selma campaign for the right to vote. He joined so many others in that cause, Congressman John Lewis, Hosea Williams, Amelia Boynton, who actually invited the SCLC that Uncle Andy worked for there. He has served us in so many positions. He was the United States ambassador to the United Nations under President Carter, a former congressman in the seat that Congressman Lewis previously held in the 5th Congressional District here in Atlanta, my district, and a former 2-term mayor of Atlanta. And in 2003, he and his wife Carolyn founded the Andrew J. Young Foundation to support and promote education, health, leadership, and human rights in the United States, Africa, and the Caribbean. I welcome Ambassador Andrew Young, as all of you know him. But for me, Uncle Andy, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. I just want to ask you this question because you come with a wealth of wisdom, and you and so many others really fought so hard for this sacred right. And so I want to ask you, what do you say to those who don't place the same value that many of you placed when you put your lives on the line in terms of this sacred right to vote? What do you say to them who feel discouraged, who feel like it really does not matter when you all fought recognizing it matters? What do you say? What is that important history we need to understand connected to the day and why it's so important?
Well, somewhere along the line, very early, I realized that the reason we were catching so much hell in the South is that in 1876, there was one vote pulled the Union troops out of the South and turn all of our people back over to the Klan types. That Black folk were doing very well in Reconstruction. and that was the period roughly from 1875 to 1890. But when the troops were pulled out of the South, all hell broke loose. It was always turned on us. And all of the lynching, all of the jailing, all of the mass arrest that put people into labor camps, all of the suffering of our people started when they took the vote away from us. And that was Rutherford B. Hayes made a compromise to get to be president and took all the troops, Union troops, out of the South and turned all of our ancestors over to the violence and bloodshed, which we still get remnants of in this day and age. And I was with down in Mississippi one time. That's another story. That a fellow by the name of Brother Steptoe in Emmett County, Mississippi, and we had taught him how to pass the literacy tests and get his people registered to vote. And he had 4 or 5 people in the back of his wagon, and he drove his wagon up to the Emmett County Courthouse in Mississippi. And when he walked up, the sheriff said, "What you want, boy?" And he said, "I wants to register to vote." And he couldn't say it quite right. And the sheriff took his gun and put it right up on his forehead and said, "What did you say?" He said, "I said, if I live, I'm going to register and vote." And the sheriff cocked the gun back and said, "What did you say?" And he wasn't saying boy, you know what he was saying. And he said, "I said, if I live, I'm going to vote." And I have seen so many people like that. I went to get Fannie Lou Hamer out of jail because she was on the way back from one of our workshops, and all of them got arrested for using the restroom in Winona, Mississippi, and then they got locked up, and then they were beaten all night long. About 10 women. And when she got back home, they had taken all of her stuff off the plantation where she had worked for about 14 years as a timekeeper. Good job. And they put all her furniture on the side of the road. And she had no regrets. She said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I'm going to vote or I'm going to die."
That's right. That's right.
Now, when you know people like that, you don't miss voting.
Amen. Ambassador Young, it is always such an honor to be with you. I wanted to ask you what your message is for young people in this election. You began this work when you were young yourself, but nowadays, and I think frankly across generations, people have always legitimately asked the question, why would I participate in a system that was never built for me in the first place? So what do we say to young people who have valid reasons for not trusting this system, but who we need to engage, not just for our future, but for theirs as well?
Well, I've been blessed by Bernice's father and many other people to go all around this world practically. I've been on every continent, and I haven't found any place where, as bad as things are, my granddaughter is married to a Nigerian. And a few weeks ago, she was saying when this was over, she was going to get a Nigerian passport for she and her daughter. And I said, why? I'm tired of being in this country. And I don't know whether you've seen the news, but it wasn't one person killed by the police. It was hundreds almost. And I mean, I had a Nigerian policeman stick me in the ribs with a bayonet to tell me just to get up and move on. And I say that I love Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the places that I think is great for the future. But I have yet to go any place on this earth where there is a better opportunity for me and my family than there is in this country. And so the challenge is not to find a place where there's no trouble. I used to think that I was going to jail and I was doing all of this so that my children and my grandchildren wouldn't have to. And I said, why am I thinking that way? The best thing that ever happened to me was hooking up with Martin Luther King. And I said, running the risk of death was, he laughed at death and he joked about it and he made fun of it and we sang about it. And that gave me purpose in life. Right. That fueled me for everything else. And I said, no, I want my children to have to struggle too. And if they have to go to jail, so be it. They'll be better off for it. And I think freedom is a constant struggle. Yes, and not only am I going to struggle till I die, but I hope my children do. And then I don't know why, but my grandchildren and even my great-grandchildren need to be prepared to struggle, because there'll be something to struggle about as long as the world goes round and as long as there's life. There will always be choices to be made between good and evil.
Right. Ambassador
and
Young
you have to fight for what is right.
Right. And Ambassador Young, as you
that's our tested ground.
Absolutely. And as you are so well aware, Frederick Douglass, his famous quote that he's known for, there is no progress without struggle. So as you have already told us many reasons that led to the vote and all of the struggle and the pain and even facing death that led to the vote, as we conclude our wonderful time with you, we conclude all of our conversations tonight with the question, why vote? Can you tell us why vote?
If you don't.
Oh my. Well, with that said, I don't know if we can use that, but
I was not expecting that.
We will close the segment with that. And thank you so much, Uncle Andy, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule.
Let me just go on a little more about that. I've been fighting with my brothers because they always got some kind of excuse for everything. And it's just time to man up. Like one guy told me after the last election, I wasn't gonna vote for that woman. They were advocating same-sex toilets. Well, they had something about same-sex toilets in North Carolina. And I said, have you ever been in a toilet with somebody else of a different sex? I said, every toilet you ever been in is a same-sex toilet. Because can't nobody get in it with your big behind.
All right.
But I'm saying that the Russians, that's how that the Russians figured black men had some problems with homosexuality. And so a lot of things that they were feeding to black men on Facebook and Twitter and all of that kind of stuff was propaganda about the rights of others, that the Hispanics are going to take your job. I mean, there's always some reason that somebody can give you for getting you to do nothing.
Mm.
And the worst thing you can do is nothing.
Mm.
Then you are nobody. And even doing something, I mean, none of us are perfect, and none of us are ever going to be perfect. But we struggle to do the best that we can. And those of us who are Christian, yes, Christians do cuss a little bit. But we know that we live by the grace and mercy and forgiveness of God.
Absolutely. And when
That
you have
all
faith,
men sin and fall short of the glory of God, and women do too.
absolutely. And when you have faced death as you did, and so many that you fought with, face death to vote, we understand your passion and your lack of patience with those who give these excuses. Ambassador Young, we can't thank you enough for joining us for tonight's conversation and for putting this in perspective. So thank you.
Okay.
We are now excited to welcome Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams is no stranger, for she gained national attention and support during her run for governor of Georgia. As founder of Fair Fight Action, which works to ensure every American has a voice in our election system, and Fair Count to ensure accuracy in the 2020 census, Stacey Abrams is a true champion for full civic engagement. And having known her for some time, she is one of the most brilliant people I have ever met. Stacey, welcome tonight.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you all. And that is an act I cannot follow.
We are sure that you can follow. Let's kick off with one of our first questions. What do you believe most people misunderstand about voter suppression and its impact on Black and Brown communities around this country?
I think people misunderstand the history of voter suppression and its permanence as a part of our nation. From our very inception, voter suppression was baked into the Constitution. Only 6% of Americans could vote in the first elections because only white men who owned land were permitted to vote. If you were a white man without land, good luck. If you were Black, you weren't human. If you were Native American, you were invisible. And if you were a woman, you were intended to be silent. It took until 1924 for Native Americans to become citizens, 1948 for them to have the right to vote. Black men got the right to vote with the 15th Amendment. White women got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. And it wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that the right to vote became real. But the reality is the architecture of voter suppression has existed in the same fashion, whether it was Jim Crow, early America, or today. And that is restrictions on who can register and stay on the rolls, who can cast a ballot, and if that ballot gets counted. And I think when we understand that the architecture has been one of the most permanent structures in our nation, then we start to understand that we can't look for dogs and hoses and billy clubs to see voter suppression. We have to look at who's being allowed to register and stay on the rolls, who's being precluded from being able to cast a ballot, and what the hurdles are to making those ballots count. That's when we understand what voter suppression is. If you are being prevented from voting or discouraged from voting, you are facing voter suppression and you have the right to fight back.
So Stacey, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it, and for all the work that you're doing. All of us know in 2013, a key provision of the Voting Rights Act was struck down that required certain states and localities with a history of discrimination against minority voters to get those changes cleared by the federal government before they went into effect. How important is it to restore the Voting Rights Act? Or I'm going to ask another question and step out there. Is it time for us perhaps to convene a constitutional convention to put this to rest? once and for all, so we don't have to come back to this Voting Rights Act in this country?
So I'll start with the second part first. A constitutional convention sounds great, but the problem is you cannot constrain a constitutional convention to one subject. And the worry I have is that if we convene a constitutional convention to guarantee the right to vote, we may leave there without anybody having the right to vote. And so we aren't situated, I think, sufficiently as a nation, particularly in this moment, to say that we have a common understanding of why democracy works. When a U.S. Congressman or U.S. Senator Mike Lee said that rank democracy was actually an impediment to progress and prosperity, and I'm misquoting him a little bit, but he did say rank democracy. He essentially dismissed democracy as a native good, and there's too much of a thread of that in our nation right now for us to risk a constitutional convention. That said, the Voting Rights Act was a miracle. As I laid out before, the history of voter suppression has existed, but the halcyon period, we had this moment of respite between 1965 and 2013 was real. It was in that moment that Black women finally had the right to vote in this country. In 1975, it was because of the Voting Rights Act that Native Americans and Latinos who were being oppressed by soon-to-be Supreme Court Justice William Rehnquist in Arizona, who were still facing literacy tests, that's when they got the real right to vote. And so for that period of time, when states were constrained in their ability to restrict access to the right to vote, the Voting Rights Act made democracy as real as it has ever been. And that's why they got it. Because when you look at the demographic inflection point that we are in as a nation, the communities that have been for 2 centuries precluded from full participation, when they achieved that participation in the 21st century, we saw a restoration of the attacks on our rights to vote. Because when people who have been oppressed finally have access to progress, it scares those who relied on their oppression for their own success.
When you talk about the reliance of these folks in power being dependent on our oppression in order for their success, that is the entire ballgame. Stacey, I'm always so blessed to be in your presence and have the virtue of your brilliance. So here's what I'm going to ask, because we have to make this as practical as possible for folks in these last 7 days of this election cycle and for many more to come. When people are experiencing that voter suppression themselves, what should they do? How should they protect themselves and their community? I went to vote today, and thankfully I didn't have any problems, but I know that's not going to be the case for so many people. So if I've made my way to the ballot box and overcome all of these hurdles, or I've gotten my absentee ballot, what do I do if I'm finding my vote is being challenged?
Number one, no, it's not your imagination. Voter suppression is real.
Real.
The reason they tell you it's not real is because they're afraid you're going to do something about it. Number one, no, it's real. Number two, don't panic. Because we know it's real, because groups like Fair Fight and others have been fighting for the last 2 years to protect access to the right to vote in this election, know that there are more opportunities for your success than there are for your failure. Number three, go to iwillvote.com to get the information you need to cast your ballot and know what the rules are where you live, but also memorize this number, 866-HOUR-VOTE. 866-HOUR-VOTE. It is populated with lawyers whose sole mission over the next 7 days is to guarantee that you get to be heard. And so 1, know it's real. 2, don't panic. 3, make your plan to vote and know that you can protect that plan at iwillvote.com or 866-HOUR-VOTE.
So Stacey, when you were campaigning, you had to work to convince folks in urban settings, in rural settings, in suburban settings, that it was important to vote. How did you translate that conversation in those different contexts? Because I've encountered some folks in the rural setting that are like, it doesn't matter what I vote. It's all going to be the same. My life doesn't change. How do you communicate the importance of the vote?
Number one, by acknowledging the legitimacy of their despair and their suspicion. If you grow up in intergenerational poverty, you've seen politicians lie to you from different parties, different communities, different races. And so when we pretend that it doesn't exist, just as when we pretend suppression doesn't exist, we also can't pretend that failed politics don't exist. People have the right to be suspicious of voting. But what we can say is that it is an absolute guarantee that if you are silent, it will damn you. Because if you are silent, then people will take your silence for consent and they will think you agree with what they're doing. If you vote, you make progress, and that progress feels small, it feels sometimes petty, and it feels too long-term and too far away from you. But where we are in America, the reason we're seeing such aggressive voter suppression is that we finally have enough people who have shared values and shared oppression that we can do something about it.
Right.
And we have done something about it. And so when we see the right to vote as the power it is not the power of magic. Nothing's going to change immediately. And we do not elect saviors. But when we participate and say that our voices will not be discounted, when we speak up, we are creating space for others to speak up with us. And for the first time in American history, there are enough of us to change the outcome of decisions in ways and in places we never imagined.
Awesome. How would you finish this sentence? I vote because.
I vote because I believe that my voice matters.
Amen.
Amen.
And hallelujah. We're going to church on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Election plate, all of it.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you, Stacey,
Thank
for
you so
joining us
much.
tonight and lending your voice to our conversation.
Thank you. It's always an honor to be in your presence, especially that of Dr. King. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey.
Brittany, Natosha, pleasure.
Thank you
Great to
so
see you.
much. I'm trying to make sure that we have our next guest ready. I think that we get to go to the one and only Derek D. Nice Jones. Is that right?
I think it's Jaden.
Wow.
Oh, it's too nice.
I wasn't-
Okay.
Heck,
I wasn't even ready. I wasn't ready. I was just enjoying the conversation.
well, we appreciate you being here. The brilliant DJ behind Club Quarantine. You know, D-Nice, we've been rocking with you for a long time. You've been rocking with us for a long time. But you are an artist with a multi-decade music career that has taken you around the entire world. Y'all know he broke Instagram. You can even buy the shirt that says, I was at Club Quarantine. We're a part of history. And you still host Club Quarantine in addition to playing the soundtrack to our lives during this pandemic and beyond it. And you're using your voice and your platform to call for social justice and to push others to voice their votes. So I will pass it to Dr. King for the first question. And we thank you for hopping in a little bit early because we were just so excited to talk to you. We couldn't wait.
Oh, wow.
And I was one of those who tuned in from time to time in Club Quarantine. So
I know.
thank you. Thank you. Did you see me? Did you see me popping in?
I did.
Okay, all right. So I wanted to ask this question. According to a CBS Morning information, Black men have increasingly become a coveted target of both campaigns. Understanding that today Black men can play a very important and determining role in this election, what more can you suggest to be done to ensure that Black men feel confident in this election process and to increase their participation?
What's interesting is I had a conversation the other day with a recording artist by the name of Offset from Atlanta, from a group called The Migos. And we had a conversation on my IG Live, and we were discussing his first time voting. Like, he didn't even understand how to vote. And I could tell you, like, as a Black man, you know, like growing up when I was younger, no one talked to me about voting at all, you know, and which was interesting that I learned everything about voting and politics through music, through the music of my generation, whether it was Public Enemy or KRS-One, and I understood what the importance of it was. So the very first, my first time voting, I was probably like 21 years old, way too old. I should have been voting since I was 18. But like I said, no one talked to me about it. So I try to spend my time talking to young Black men about the importance of voting and understanding what your rights are, understanding that, listen, some of us may have had like this childhood where we've gotten into some trouble and we didn't know that we still have a right to vote, you know, and I try to spend my time doing that. So I do understand why they're covering that demo. It's a very important demo. A lot of Black men, a lot of my brothers that I've had conversations with, mainly the younger guys, not the older guys. The older guys, of course, we've all been out there doing the work, but the younger guys didn't understand the importance at all of voting. They didn't think their vote mattered. They didn't think that most of the politicians represented who we are. And they just didn't think that they were for us. And it's just beautiful to see that now this younger generation, especially because of what's been going on in the world, not just in the States, but in the world with Black people, that they're now starting to take it seriously. Like, hey, wait up, we have to do something about this. We need to get out there and allow our voices to be heard. And they are taking it seriously now. And I'm so happy that that the word that we are all putting out there is starting to resonate with that younger generation.
Absolutely. I have two sons, D-Nice, 115 and 120.
Wow.
My 20-year-old gets it, right? And he better get it because he just voted in his first presidential election last week. But my 15-year-old asked very curiously, he's like, does our vote really matter? What about the electoral college? You know, kind of like putting up all of these thoughts that these young kids are having, like the electoral college, is it really going to allow my vote to be heard? What do you say to these young brothers out there? Give me some words that I can speak to my son. And as you do so, you'll be doing the same for our audience.
Listen, I will tell you this. I didn't understand much about it as well until I started. You know, I was fortunate enough to, and it's so crazy how music has always been like an important factor in my life. Because of my music background, I became, when President Obama was running for re-election, I not only DJ'd the inaugural ball, but before that, I became a surrogate for President Obama. So it was, you know, they taught me a lot about that. You know, a lot of these things I had no idea how it worked, and it's all strategy. It's like playing a game of chess. Like, yes, the electoral college is extremely important. It's a system that's in place. We can't change it right now, so we have to understand that we need to get out there and vote. Even when we think our vote doesn't matter, we need to get out there and do it. And like I said, brothers are really taking their time to learn more about it now. And that's one thing that I find extremely beautiful. Like, your 15-year-old son asking that question means that he heard it somewhere and that he's trying to figure out how important it is. And it's important for us to stay on top of him, to let him know, like, listen, everything matters, and not just voting for the president, but that down ballot. You know, that down ballot is important to know what's going on in just your community alone. You know, you win your community, then you can win your state, and then we can win this election. It's important.
All right, Derek, I want to ask you the real question.
Okay, here we go.
You know how I get, right? So it's yes, it's showing up at the ballot box, but we are seeing so many more Black men demanding that all politicians on all sides of the aisle do more to show value for the Black vote. When you think about that, you know, we've seen some folks do it in ways that are really disciplined and smart. We've seen some other choices too. But when you see what's happening, why do you think more and more men are being vocal about the necessity of the value for the vote and not just showing up to do it?
Just on a personal level, I think men or just Black men in particular, we're just tired. You know, we're tired, and we're also tired of allowing Black women to do the work. You know, Black women have been doing this work for so long. And I think that there are men out there that are finally stepping up, saying, all right, enough is enough. Like, we have to get involved. And especially with what's going on. I mean, I've seen so many people become much more motivated after George Floyd, after Breonna Taylor. And I think it's been that way now because we're seeing this stuff happen. We're seeing it happen. We're seeing how, like, we're not getting justice, and we're understanding that it's not just about the president. It's also about the attorney general. It's also about, like, you know, the prosecutor. Like, it's about all of that. And, like, we're now starting to understand that we need to allow our voices to be heard. We need to get out there and speak up about it. And I love and in particular, I almost feel like the further away we got from, like, the civil rights era, that those generations after didn't take it seriously. Like, there are some of us that really took it seriously, but there was a generation of people that kind of lost it, that didn't take this seriously, that didn't recognize, like, all of the work that Dr. King and all of the people that came before us did for us to have this right to vote, for us to have that right for our voice to be heard. And it's more about the long-term effects. People were so used to, like, immediate gratification. They didn't understand that, listen, what we're doing now will matter for generations, for our kids.
That's right.
It's not just about, we're not going to see the results immediately. It's about the work that we're doing now, the work that was done in the 60s, or why we have the opportunity to do what we're doing now. Like, it's the work that they laid, the groundwork that was laid before us. When I look at this younger generation, and I see, like, I'm having conversations with them, and I'm not speaking down. I'm actually speaking with them, and we're having real dialogue, talking about what's going on and sharing with them these stories that people haven't shared before. and they are they're out there doing the work. They're out there doing the work. They're out there doing the social justice work. They're out there learning more about politics. And I think what's happening right now is so important, and they're starting to recognize it. And we have to keep pushing that. We have to keep pushing the message.
Amen.
Amen. So thank you for that. Dee, I want to ask you this question, and not question in closing, but I want you to finish this statement for us. I vote because.
I vote because I'm trying to make life better for my kids and future generations. Like, that's why I vote. It's not, I've had this amazing life, where I had ups and downs. I never lost the faith ever. I understand what the importance is of voting. I understand the importance of community. I vote because I am really trying to make a difference and leave this world better than it was when I was here. That's extremely important to me.
Well, thank you so much for your work, your activism, your voice, using your platform, and keep the DJing coming. We appreciate that. We need it.
It's not even optional now. I have to do it. I have to do it for us. And thank you for joining me in Club Quarantine.
Yes, thank you. So Brittany, he's been talking about those young brothers, and we got a young brother coming up. Yeah,
a young
tell us who that is. A young kid who's been an actor, but is also an activist. Who
right.
is it?
A young king, the Jaden Smith. He needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. Jaden Smith is an actor, a musician, and as you already said, an incredible young activist. He's the co-founder of Just Water and 501c3. And one of his many goals is to create a water filtration system that's inexpensive and can be used in low-income communities and nations. Yes, environmental injustice affects us too, and he's here to help us take care of it. So Jaden Smith, we are so excited to have you. Excited to talk to you. Welcome.
Hey,
I think you might be on mute.
You're on mute.
This is what happens in this virtual world. There we go.
Zoom, it's a crazy thing, but how are you guys? It's so good to be here. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. Glad you're here with us.
We're glad you're here with us. I want to talk actually about one of your newest projects, the Solution Committee. So you started this series on Snapchat. You understand who your audience is and who really needs to hear from you. So you focus this series on social justice and bringing together young activists to focus on solutions, right? Not just talk about what the problem is, but how we actually build the next tomorrow and a better future. So what inspired you to create this platform and to take on these important causes?
Well, I feel like there's so much going on in the world right now, and I really wanted to have a voice in the space and to be able to openly talk to an audience and include a younger audience in that group of people as well, to kind of inspire people to get out there to vote, and also inspire people to make a difference and participate in what's going on in the world right now in a positive way, and a place where we could come together and we can talk about solutions. It's kind of like a clubhouse, that you can just hang out with your friends and talk about solutions and hear them talk about how they feel, with everything that's going on in the world. So when Snapchat came to us with that opportunity, I really was like, hey, I want to do the show and I want it to be about this. And I want to have these types of real conversations, because I feel like that's just so important for people to get together and to have these real conversations, like what's happening right here and right now. That's why I'm so honored to be here, because this is what it really takes to grab our community together and then to have conversations and say, how do we feel about what's going on and what are we going to do, and how are we going to make a difference? So I feel like that's just so important.
Awesome. And so Jaden, I just want to say to you that I'm very inspired by you. We were together back in January when we honored you with the Coretta Scott King Angel Award. And
I still have that award, and I look at it every single day. So.
Well, thank you, and you and so many young people, as was the case in the movement that my father led, but so many becoming more involved in social causes. And I'm just wondering, what have you learned? What have you heard from other young people as to why they don't vote or haven't voted? Because in 2016, 46% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted, compared to 71% of those over 65. Mm-hmm. So how do we change that?
I think the biggest thing that I run into when I'm talking to young people about voting is a lack of awareness of what's actually happening, and a lack of awareness of how big of an effect and a change that they can have. And the fact that we're just not voting the next president in office, we're also, you might be able to vote for your next sheriff. You might be able to vote for all of these different things that are on the ballot that people might not know that can really make a change. You might want something to happen in the world or in your city, and you might be able to vote somebody into a position that allows for those things to happen in your neighborhood or in your town, but people might not know that. And once we can start explaining, hey, it's not just up here, you can affect on a smaller level, that's also very important. I think that is how you can kind of get to people and make them realize, wow, it's not just this one thing that we're voting on that everybody is. It's all of these different things too. So let me educate myself on what this is. Let me educate myself on all the different people that are on the ballot and what they represent and what they're going to do if they come into office, and how I can share my vote with that person that's going to make the world or even my smaller community better in the way that I seeing, whether it's through sustainable energy or whether it's through defunding certain programs. You can do those types of things with your vote and bringing those people into office that are also fighting for you and representing you. So I feel like when we can kind of explain that to young people, it gives them kind of an empowerment to say, hey, okay, I really can make a difference. I do want to get out there and I do want to make a change. And this actually is important to me.
Awesome. Jaden, it's so great to meet you.
Also good to meet you as well.
And you truly are an inspiration in the way in which you've leveraged your platform as actor and musician to now truly impact important issues that will affect many generations to come. One of that is with the work that you've done with Just Water in the environmental justice space. I work a lot in the housing space. And what I find is that these issues of water, of housing, of environment have become partisanized. It's almost as if you talk about environmental justice, you must be talking about one political party over another. But tell us a little bit about how these should not be partisan issues, right? These are essential issues to how all of us live.
100%. These are essential issues. No matter what side you're on, we should be focused on what's going on in these communities, because environmental racism and prejudices are real and they do exist, and you can see them in so many cities. For example, like a city in Flint, where a community where there is much more Black and brown people, those are the communities, the north end of Flint, where the water is the absolute worst. In the downtown of the areas where it's more, different types of communities and higher income communities, there's, they go out of their way to fix the pipes. They go out of their way to make sure that the water is clean over there. And I feel like too many times there is an environmental racism situation happening where the communities that have the darker skin color are getting treated worse. Same thing is happening in Newark, New Jersey, but it's happening through the water, which is something that people might not be paying attention to. And I feel like we really need to understand what's happening and where it's happening, because where it's happening and who it's affecting has a lot to do with the problem and what's happening. And I do believe that this should not be an issue that no sides are talking about. This needs to be a thing that everybody is talking about and that everybody can be focused on, because when it just flies under the radar and we're allowing, our communities to essentially be attacked in these types of ways, it doesn't work. That's not the way to build a sustainable and a strong, interconnected, society.
Thank you for helping us connect the dots on that, because far too often our people are being left out of those conversations, and we think that we shouldn't be a part of those conversations because those issues don't affect us, but they do every single day. And we're grateful, Jaden, that you use your creative brilliance, not just to line your own pockets, but actually to seek justice for all of us. So with that, I have one closing question that we have been asking everyone, because we want to get this clear, straight answer from you. Finish this statement for me. I vote because.
I vote because I want to change the world. I vote because I want to impact the future and make the world a better place.
And that's what we should all want. Jaden Smith, thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. And more importantly, for every single thing you do in the world. We are grateful that you are here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored. Anytime. I appreciate you guys and the work that you do at the center. It's so unbelievable. So thank you.
Thank you, Jaden.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. And with that, I believe I'm passing it on to Dr. King to introduce our next guest.
And I think our next guest is that my Sora, Yvette Nicole Brown?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet. Okay.
No,
okay.
we get to talk to one of the Greenleafs. We get to talk to one of the Greenleafs. I'm very excited about it.
Oh, okay. We get to talk to my brother and my friend, Lamman Rucker. All of us know him from Greenleaf, as she said, Jacob Greenleaf. Wow, we're sad. But that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. We'll have some kind of revival.
Right?
We might get something else. We'll just keep hoping and waiting. He joined us earlier this year on our online protest after the murder of George Floyd, and he's a true advocate for social justice and youth and health, and actively supporting voter registration drives to ensure communities of colors get to the polls. So my brother, my friend, Lamman, where you at? Where are you? I should say more appropriately. You're here?
I think
he might still be on the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But your soror is here, and she's ready.
That's right. So sorry. Go ahead.
All this pink and green. All this pink and green. Here we go.
Yes. Here we go with the ski.
Listen, it's so funny, ladies. Now I've been sitting here enjoying all this wonderful talking, and I got a notice that a delivery's coming. So my dog's going to bark at any moment, but I want to get up in here and get as much of this as I can before he does what he's going to do.
This is family conversation.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, Yvette Nicole Brown is an actress and host. We know her for her roles on Community, The Mayor, The Odd Couple, Drake and Josh, Girlfriends, Mom, for the fire she spits on Twitter and on OWN Network and so many other places. She's also an activist who does not shy away from using her voice, her influence, and her platform to champion justice and liberation for our people. We recently were together this last week on Black Women Own the Conversation to talk about the importance of our votes. And you burned it down then. You just burned the stage down. And I know you're going to do the same thing tonight. So I want to actually ask you, because we've already heard all of this Greekdom, but we've been seeing an incredible campaign, this viral campaign, Stroll to the Polls.
Yes.
How do you think that campaigns like that one and others that really shine a light on the beauty of Black culture have ignited Black women to get out the vote?
There's been so many instances where we've been told that our vote doesn't matter. We've been told that it's not important to join up. And we even talked about this when we were on OWN, this idea that there's only so much to go around. And so everybody's a little grabby and stingy with their blessings. And I think what Stroll to the Polls shows is that we are all in this together, whether you are a part of the Divine Nine or you are just a sister in melanin only. We are in this together, and we have to come together and do what's right to help our communities. And I love that they are focusing on us, because that's what we've been asking for.
That's right.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So as the one who wears red and white on this call,
I don't know what that is. What is that? I have never.
Right. You wear beautiful chocolate, girl. Beautiful chocolate.
Yes.
As I say, my best friend is an AKA. Right.
Yes. You chose wisely.
Yes, you did.
That's great. So on your platforms, you've talked quite a bit about a voting plan.
Yeah.
What is a voting plan, and why is that important?
Well, it's been the case for a few elections, but for this one in particular, there's a lot of ways you can get your vote in. It's not just on election day. So the plan is important because you need to make sure how you're going to do it. Are you going to go on election day? Are you going to mail your vote? Are you going to drop it off once you do your absentee? It's important for you to figure that out before November 3rd, because people get flat tires. It snows in certain parts of the nation in November. So make sure you know what your plan is and what your contingency plan is. Yesterday was vote early day, and I think it was important that we had that day. I think everybody should try to get it in even before November 3rd. Be home drinking some coffee, watching the returns on November 3rd. Don't be out in the fray. But it's important to figure out what your particular plan is and talk to your friends and family and find out what their plan is as well.
So Nicole Sara, I know you have been shining a light on voter suppression, and we just spoke with Stacey Abrams about that as well. You've talked a great deal about Save My Vote 2020.
Yep.
Why have you felt important to use your platform in this way? And how do we, this is very important, how do we get more actors and entertainers to help push social and racial justice causes?
I feel like somewhere they got the memo that if they use their platform that they're going to lose a little money. And I actually don't care about money. I'm going to say it. I don't. When this is over, I'm trying to get my well done. So, and I also know that the love of money is the root of all evil. That is in the Bible.
Yes.
So I don't love money. We need it. We need a roof over our head. We need food to eat. But as far as shutting up or silencing myself so that I can get a few more follows or a few more likes, that doesn't interest me. If it's 2 or 3 gathered in his name by the time this election is over, but we have someone in office who actually cares about us, I will be fine. So I'm trying to tell my friends that are in the industry, it's not about you, boo-boo. It's not about your tax bracket. It's not about your Birkin bag. It's not about your fans. It is about people that don't have what they need, getting what they need. I said this even when we were on when I was with my sister Brittany. I don't have kids, but every time there's a measure for schools, I vote to raise my taxes for schools. I don't have to have kids to care about your kids. Hello? I don't have to
That's right.
suffering to care about your suffering. I am going to care about everyone. I am my brother and my sister's keeper, and I believe that. So I believe, and if you're within my earshot, whatever platform you have, I don't care if you have 5 followers or 5 million, you have those people to speak truth and goodness to them. If you are not using your platform for good, you have it for nothing. I don't care if it's your local PTA. I don't care if it's your neighborhood watch. I don't care if it's 50 million people on Instagram. Use it for good. You have it to use it. That's the only reason you have it.
Awesome.
So finish this sentence for us.
Yes.
Finish this sentence for us. I vote because.
I vote because people died for me to have this right.
Amen.
Hallelujah. We had multiple.
Taking us to church.
Like revival. Hallelujah.
Listen, you usually the one doing it. I'm trying to pour a little bit more into you, Brittany, because you always defeated by the end of a Zoom. So I'm trying to give something to you.
That's the ultimate. Don't sell your soul to gain the whole world.
Come
right?
on.
That's
so
right.
Much more. So much
even
more.
want it. I always said
awesome.
the moment I got to leave Christ to go anywhere, I'm going no further. No more. May it stop. And I right hand to God. May it stop. May my forward progression stop. The moment I got to leave Christ behind to keep going.
Woo! Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's offering time.
Hey!
Mics dropping, money clanging.
Come on.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
The plate.
Yes,
I might call some lines. Do I have somebody who can join me and give it
Is there one? Is there one?
You got 2 whole ministers here.
Right. So, Lamman, you just came into one of them green leaf services.
I thought I was going to have to start preaching. My girl Yvette got it. What's up, babe? Long time
What's
no
up, brother? Good to see you,
How
babe.
you doing?
I'm doing good.
Great to see you. Always good to hear you and see you. Keep doing your thing, girl. We all
Thank you, brother.
We all love you. Appreciate
I love you
very much.
So, Lamman, we already introduced you about 20 minutes ago. No, I'm just joking. A few minutes ago, we actually introduced you. Everybody knows you.
Y'all been rolling though.
Yeah, we've been rolling, and you've been rolling. You've been rolling too.
On top of this, this lap of luxury full of ladies right here. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of whatever I can in here.
All right.
Well, we had D Nice Derek talking earlier about the importance of making sure we get to our brothers and enforce and instill and amplify the importance of getting them to get out to the polls and vote. What do you say about the importance of leveraging your platform, whatever your platform may be, for something larger than yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you all were just talking about it. There's a lot of people who are actually cut from this cloth. Not everybody has the courage. Not everybody has the energy. Not everybody has the support. But I'm glad I understood a long time ago that if the dream doesn't, include everybody else, it ain't big enough, So it ain't about you. I think you all even said it earlier. I've been told that long time ago. And for some people, for some reason, that feels like that's that's diminishing their spirit in some way. But what it really is, it's humility. It's understanding that you have a responsibility. You've got a responsibility to God. You've got a responsibility to your elders. You all talked about the fact that people have died for us to even have this privilege. So just that sense of obligation. There's a lot of people who really do want to do better than they're doing. They don't always have the support. They don't always have the information. So it's absolutely important to use whatever position you have. I mean, I believe no matter what your circumstance is, there's no greater gift and resource than you. You alone. If you can't do anything but pour into the neighbor's child, or look out for, the brother and sister down the street or next door, where everybody just has to literally pour into one another. You don't have to own.
That's all right.
I mean, he's ultimately talking about the importance of being interconnected, right? And how, and we heard that from Yvette Nicole as well, like the importance of our connection to one another.
That this is all about the we and not the me, right? But if we are only showing up at the ballot box concerned with ourselves, our wealth, our taxes, our outcomes, our house, our block, our neighborhood, that's just not going to be enough. And if Yvette can think about other people's children when she's walking into the booth, and so can we all. I know that dog is barking. It is completely okay.
Barking, y'all. They at the door. They at the door trying to deliver something.
It's a family conversation. We do understand, but we are grateful that you are here. We thank you for spending your time with us. Go take care of what you need to, and we will see you as you stroll to the polls.
Yes.
I think we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but what Lamman was talking about was so important. And one of the things I was actually going to ask him that I would love to hear from you all while we try to get this figured out is, what is you all's plan for the day after Election Day? I mean, we have a lot of necessary and righteous effort, energy, and capacity into making sure that we carry out this election season in a way that is successful for our community. But we know the work doesn't stop on November 3rd. What are you all's next steps look like?
My next steps look very similar to my current steps. I mean, whoever is in office, it's our job. Even if the person that we want to win wins, that's not the end of the conversation. That's not the end of the push. That's not the end of holding those folks in office, down ballot, in office accountable for the things that are important to our community, the things that are important to our cities, our states, our local areas. So my actions continue, right? And I think that would be the case for many of us.
Exactly. And our work continues in helping us to create this beloved community, because if all of us are involved in that kind of work, hopefully it will prevent us to getting to the place where we are now. And so as a part of that process, continuing to educate and train people in the nonviolence as taught by my father is going to be critical. Continuing to have these conversations, perhaps delving even deeper into these conversations and trying to bridge some of the divide. I tell people all the time, look, these are elected officials. They are one person. They influence a lot of people. And let's not forget about all of those people that they have influenced that still are part of our beloved community. And so how is it that we're going to bridge between those that, have been a part of the polarization, the victims of the polarization, and really connect with them and help all of us to understand that we can create a win-win pathway for all of us to peacefully coexist where there is true justice and true equity.
Absolutely.
Dr. King, I love talking about the beloved community, because when I think about what the next tomorrow can look like, what our most equitable future looks like, it is that. It is an end to poverty. It is an end to the cancer and the sin of racism. It is an end to militarism. And it is the creation of peace, right? Which we know your father so righteously said is not just the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. And the only
right.
And it includes people from both sides of the aisle.
Exactly. And we forget that part of the conversation.
That's right.
It has to include everybody.
It's not one-sided.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
That's right. I think that we are preparing for our final guest. Is that right, Natosha?
Yes, I think we are. And to close us out, we have none other than Bishop Marvin Sapp, an award-winning gospel singer. Hey, Bishop.
How's everybody tonight?
Songwriter, faith leader, currently the senior pastor at Chosen Vessel Cathedral, the 100-year-old first Black Apostolic Church of Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for joining us tonight for this very important conversation. We were planning to bring you in to talk about the faith aspect, but we have had church multiple times already tonight. So we need
I
you
know. I've been paying attention. Y'all done had so much church tonight.
You the benediction. We need.
I just need to say, may the Lord watch between me and we while we're absent.
While we're absent, one for another.
Yeah. But I mean, this has been amazing. I loved it. Every minute of it has been amazing to me.
Well, how can we engage faith leaders to encourage their congregants to work in their communities, to become active and informed voters? I mean, especially now in this virtual context, right? You know, many are saying we're not the gathered, we're the scattered. But truth be told, the Great Commission wasn't to the gathered, it was to the scattered. So how do we engage faith leaders in this moment?
Well, the truth of the matter, I tell people all the time, the church is not closed. The pews have just changed. You know, before everybody gathered together in one space. Now we're gathering together, but we're gathering in a virtual space. We need to pay attention to what's actually happening in our country as it pertains to, you know, for me, it's COVID, because COVID has been like really affecting my personal family. I moved to Texas, but my brother, my sister-in-law, another brother, a former deacon, two former deacons, and just found out like my aunt and my cousins have contracted it in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
But it's amazing to me that even though we're dealing with these types of issues health-wise, we just put a judge in place that's about to take away the ACA. So it's important that we get out and that we vote, simply because what is affecting our community the most is what they're taking away consistently. You know, people talk about, you know, the whole concept and aspect of, you know, Donald Trump instituting, if you will, prison reform. And I think that was a great thing that he absolutely introduced, or got passed rather, because he didn't really introduce it, but he got past prison reform. However, when you look at the federal appointed judges that have been federally appointed, that 100% of them are conservative. And not only are they just conservative, but 100% of them, not one of them is minority. These are the things that we need to pay attention to, specifically in this season. So I've been challenging my members. I've been challenging my followers all on social media. I've been telling people to buy my records. You all have to vote in this season. This is the most important season, electoral season, that we've ever had to experience. And if there's going to be a change, you know, we have to change it at the voting booth.
So Bishop, you've made those connections between faith and works. Faith without works is dead in this arena. And certainly my father modeled that. How do you think we can get more pastors really making that connection? Because I think it affects congregants in terms of their becoming active voters, and not just voting, but engaged citizens.
Well, I think information is power. I really do. And I think as a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ, that we ought to take moments and at least share information as it pertains to what's going on in our society. You know, even though I stand up and it's my responsibility to preach, you know, Jesus and him crucified, and literally try to share a message that will bring about change and challenge people, I also believe that it is important that we give them information as it pertains to what's going on in the world in which we live in. So even if I don't try to intermingle it with my message, I still take time to say things over the pulpit to challenge our people to get to the voting box, because I'm telling you, it is absolutely unequivocally important in this season.
You know, you talked about the confirmation and the within minutes swearing in, at least ceremonial swearing in, of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court last night after this very rushed process. And I felt such chaos in my spirit. And I'll tell you, I turned on Perfect Peace. I literally went to your catalog because I needed to return to that rock on which we build our hope. So I found such solace in your words and in your work, but I'm really thinking about what the work looks like for our people, for God's people. As I was talking with both Natosha and Dr. King about this before, after Election Day, that there are still so many broken pieces in our communities, that there's still so much chaos and still so many needs that have yet to be filled. Bishop, how does the church have to show up for the community, not just on election day, but every day thereafter?
Well, I just think that at the particular point in time that we need to make sure that we hold our elected officials accountable, that we still have to remain just as unified as we are now, because it's, to be perfectly honest with you all, I was born in the late 60s. I remember the 70s, but I haven't seen the level of unification that we are experiencing in this day and time in a very long time. And my hope and prayer is that those who are in leadership position, and even those who are in fellowship position, that we will all remain unified to this point so that we can really make impact and really make a difference. Just because we're voting for Donald Trump, who I've said for years since he's gotten in office that he is a distraction, make sure that we focus on the down ballots, because that's what really affects our communities, the stuff that's happening in our states, the stuff that's happening in our local municipalities. These are the things that are absolutely important. But that unification, us staying together, us staying focused, and us making a decision that we're going to ride or die together, because if we do, the rest of our days will be the best of our days. And that's what it's really all about.
Absolutely. You mentioned down ballot, Bishop. And I think it's worth stating that 99 legislative chambers in the country, out of those 99, 86 are facing elections in November. When you think of down ballot, it's those state houses, it's the sheriff, it's the judges, it's the amendment to your state constitutions that allow for things like affordable housing to have tax exemptions. When we look at our country and realize we're just as divided as we were in 1968, when the Kerner Commission came out with their report that we are separate and unequal to America's Black and white, the wealth gap between white folks and Black folks is just as wide, if not wider, than it was in 1968. So when we take all of these things into consideration, how do you complete this sentence? I vote because.
I vote because I understand the importance of my voice being my vote. I get it. I get the importance of me standing in that ballot box and making a conscious decision, not to vote just for my own personal benefit, because I tell people this all the time. I benefit from all of his tax cuts, but the members that I pastor don't. And because they don't, I'm not voting for me. I'm voting for them. And I'm voting for the impact that it will have in their lives.
Amen.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So
Bishop, yes, Bishop, thank you so much for that. And I appreciate you and your work and your ministry. And as you was just saying that, I thought about my father who said that many times we feel that self-preservation is the first law of nature, but to him, he felt that other preservation is. And then when we preserve other selves, we preserve ourselves. And so thank you for your true commitment to advancing the kingdom of God and standing on the side of what's right and what's just.
I think every believer needs to stand on Proverbs 19:17. Make sure you read it, because I promise you it's going to make a difference.
All right.
Amen. Amen.
Y'all have a good one.
Thank you, Bishop.
One thing's for sure, Natosha, as we know, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice.
Right. They rejoice. They rejoice. And
yes,
victory is truly ours, right?
It is. And so thank you again, Bishop Sapp. And we look to see you in the near future as well. Well, wow. Why vote? We did that. A lot tonight. There's been a lot of information, a lot of inspiration. And if anybody's still unconvinced, we just have to keep doing the work. And as you said, Brittany, it doesn't end on election day. It may begin, it continues in some ways, and it begins in other ways.
That's right.
And so I want to thank you all for joining me tonight in co-hosting this Why Vote 2020 Beloved Community Talks. Hopefully one day we can do this again, now that we've kind of gotten our vibe together.
Love it.
On this platform. And I want to thank all of those behind the scenes. People don't know there are many people who work with us behind the scenes on these Beloved Community Talks. So I want to thank the dream team of the King Center and the production team for all the work that they have done. Amidra Kelly, Benita Hampton Smith, Tara Gay, and so many others, Pastor Vanetta West. Thank you all for everything that you are doing. And I just want to say something in closing as we think about why vote 2020. We've heard a lot of different reasons why we should vote 2020. But the one thing that I want to really emphasize is, as has been already said, is that it is the only, I want you to hear that, it is the only, and it is the absolute best way for us to ensure that we are a part of this country and that our voice is heard, and know that everything in your life is impacted by people who are in legislative office, from the local to the state to the federal level. You are impacted. You can't escape it. Daddy said it best. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in the single garment of destiny, and what affects one directly affects all indirectly. And I can't be all that I ought to be until you're all that you ought to be, and you can't be all that you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. I can't even be everything I ought to be until you vote, and you can't be everything that you ought to be till I vote. So let's vote together. Let's make it count. Let's continue to encourage those who haven't already voted to take advantage of the next few days of early voting. And let's continue to dig in and do the necessary work that we have to do to build the beloved community. It's not easy. It can get a little messy. It gets uncomfortable, but we've got to do something to deconstruct and reconstruct this country so that we're now building on a foundation of love. So absolutely. God bless you, and thank you for joining us tonight, and continue to be safe. Don't forget to vote and vote and vote. And remember that we have work to continue to do even after this election.
Amen and indeed.
Amen.
Have a good night.
Great being here. God bless you.
Let us march on ballot boxes until somehow we will be able to develop that day. And men will have food and material necessities for their bodies, freedom and dignity for their spirits, education and culture for their minds. Let us march on ballot boxes until men and women will no longer walk the streets in search for jobs that do not exist. Let us march on ballot boxes until the empty stomachs of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, Louisiana, and South Carolina to feel. Let us march on ballot boxes. Until the idle industries of Appalachia are revitalized, let us march on ballot boxes. Until brotherhood is more than a meaningless word at the end of a prayer, but the first order of business on every legislative agenda, let us march on ballot boxes.